Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode 1 of the Impulsive Thinker podcast. I am your host, André Brisson, and on episode 1, I decided that it would be the best way to introduce this podcast with a awesome first guest host, Nicole Solitar. She's a program advisor at Strategic Coach and works hand in hand with high achieving entrepreneurs for over 10 or almost 10 years, 10-year anniversary coming up. She has been my program advisor for, it feels like a long time, but the time has gone quickly. But she has definitely seen me as an undiagnosed ADHD entrepreneur. She's watched me grow during my diagnosis and the growth afterwards. She has been my cheerleader, supporting actor, and accountability partner in developing this podcast. Actually, I decided to throw this in the trash, and then she called BS on me, and this is where we are now. So, Nicole, thank you very much, and this episode is all yours.
Awesome.
Tell us about yourself a little bit and about Strategic Coach.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much. And I am so grateful, so honored to be, the first guest host on the first podcast of the Impulsive Thinker. I, as you mentioned, I'm a program advisor at Strategic Coach. We are a company that works directly with high achieving entrepreneurs and their teams, helping them to run really seamless self-managing or self-multiplying companies. I have had the privilege of being here almost 10 years and working with hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs and their team members. So I have seen it all, but certainly just connecting in with this podcast and connecting in with you. We've worked together a long time, and really being a part of that journey from undiagnosed to newly diagnosed to now the kind of afterflow of that. And I know it's just a continual progression of all of the learnings and things that you'll be reflecting back on through these podcasts. So I am so excited to be guest hosting and really take the opportunity of this first podcast to let people know, who you are and really what you bring to this space, because I think that's the reason I didn't let you trash this. I think there is definitely a need for these kinds of conversations, and especially being so connected to high achieving entrepreneurs. This is a lot more common, and there are a lot more challenges in this space than I think people really acknowledge. So excited to be here.
Awesome.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm honored that you're here.
Awesome. So right out of the gate, I think the Impulsive Thinker is such a eloquent, title for this podcast, and would love to start with why that was, what you decided to call this podcast, because I think it, as I said, eloquent. I think it's beautiful, and I think it really does get to the bottom of a lot. So why the Impulsive Thinker?
Well, as you know, in Strategic Coach, one of the canons of the program is the unique ability, what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, what you love to do, and what you have a passion for. And then with that whole process of defining your unique ability is also identifying your best habits. And one of my best habits I discovered was what I called the Impulsive Thinker, where a lot of my great ideas and random ideas and out there ideas, and a lot of times out there unique solutions that work, has always been when I was talking with other people trying to solve a problem. And I discovered that I'm really good at refining an idea by writing it down, but to get to the point of getting that idea always involves someone else, so I can get my impulsive thinking active, and hence the podcast and the format that we've decided to go on.
And the word impulsive, I think, is, connected to ADHD. How does that kind of connect for you?
Well, impulsivity is one of the symptoms of ADHD, which either once it's managed, it's actually it's one of my biggest strengths is basically thinking is saying without thinking. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the impulsivity, if it's managed properly, is that you can come up with some really out there solutions and ideas. A lot of times people is, how can you get that solution from something that we're not even really talking to, that doesn't relate to this? But for some reason, the way my brain keeps firing on all 2000 cylinders and it can't stop, and it's always reeling around. So then this, that, it just seems to pop into me. And I take that as it's one of my it is my unique ability, seeing things where other people can't see.
Yeah. And I love, I mean, we've talked in depth about so many things, but I love your ability to take something like a symptom or something that somebody might see as, a negative, and turn it into a strength or a positive. And I feel like that is really one of the, talking about unique ability, but one of the unique abilities that you bring to the way you look at this diagnosis and the way that you look at it for yourself. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about that idea of what others would deem as weaknesses or obstacles and flipping them to strengths?
I have for at least 18 plus years. It's been a constant journey for me to understand myself better. Taking different assessments, reading self-help books, trying to really understand how I work best and where my strengths are. But unknowingly, I was actually identifying my weaknesses to build on in the neurotypical world, and finding fault in me to justify that I'm not working like everyone expects. So this is because and then I start masking. But through all that process, and then deciding one day that every obstacle, actually I decided early as a child that every obstacle in the end is an opportunity. So every time I hit a wall, I always try to figure out how to get around it. So with time and talking with a lot of like-minded people in the self-improvement, self-awareness, self-actualization, we've had many conversations, me and you, is I started to believe, and I've seen and I've proven that an unmanaged strength becomes a weakness. So I had that mantra, and that's why I started dealing with my team, identifying their strengths. And then when they were overusing their strengths or using that as a justification to not work effectively, efficiently, it became a weakness. And then after my diagnosis, it just hit me one day that, unmanaged ADHD symptoms is a weakness. It's a disorder then, if it's unmanaged. But if I manage them, just like I do with my diabetes, it becomes a strength.
Right. Great point. And I've seen this so organically show up in so many different ways, but for you, that idea of taking those strengths and putting parameters or strategic boundaries around them, let's say, how does that translate for you? What does that end up showing up as in your professional and or personal life?
That was a really good word to use, boundaries. After my diagnosis, and then I really hyper focused on learning a lot about the ADHD brain, and then I started to discover and identify my own unique ADHD. Starting applying boundaries was very key. At work, with customers, with staff, and a lot of boundaries on even the type of tasks and jobs that I decided to stop doing stuff I don't like, that I'm not good at. And I actually created a lot of frustration, and then emotional dysregulation would take over. But at home, having to be able to communicate by understanding it's ADHD, we can communicate having these certain boundaries and explain the why. It really helped at home too. And a lot of relationships, professionally and personally. But just now that we know what it is, I was able to communicate it properly rather than just say it is what it is, or it's different, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, even as a neurotypical, having had all these conversations with you, I think my understanding of how these things show up, and again, that kind of flipping to a strength. And one of the ways that I've seen that show up, for you, is in a lot of the kind of tools and structures and habits that you've created. And, every kind of idea or way of getting something done is turned into a structure that's more easy to follow. And, again, I've seen so many of these pop up for you. Where does that kind of need for creating structures and things come from?
Creating structure just helps. It's mental energy management.
I love that.
A lot with the ADHD brains, the executive functioning skills it's a deficit. We have a deficit for executive functioning skills, which is how you plan, execute goals and tasks. And your working memory is very short too. So by identifying that, and there we go, ADHD tangent. What was the question again?
No, no worries. Also used to this, probably everybody listening too. No, I was just asking kind of where, and I think this is the perfect answer, where the need for creating structures and some of those habits has come from.
The structure helps. Structure comes about is that I got routines, habits that I created that became routines that requires less mental energy to remember. And or storing information, like, working memory deficiency. I got a logbook. Everything I do work-wise, I've talked to, I got to remember goes in a logbook, so I don't have to try and remember it and tax my energy. And then if we're not interested in something, we got to focus harder, and that burns up a lot of mental energy, and we actually get more brain fog. Some people call it brain fog, but I just call it mental burnout by the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So the structure really helps it, that it reduces surprises. Mm-hmm. By doing that, then our ADHD brain does not fight or flight and have a massive reaction like a pop bottle. You shake it, take the cap out, goes and then gone. And that reduces surprises, and it's more, and you can foresee stuff happening. So that's what a lot of it came from me, is like, I looked at myself one day, I says, why am I freaking out all the time? And I started realizing what the triggers were. And then I started to minimize those or structure certain things. The biggest one for me was actually made my engineering company ADHD friendly by creating systems for my team. So they would do the same tasks over and over in the same order, in the same way. And they would come to me at certain points and in a certain way that I would not be surprised, and I would be accepting of it.
Awesome. So that's, just a great, I think, follow-up question around being an entrepreneur, starting, running, selling, starting again, companies. So in that professional space as an entrepreneur, where or how does ADHD fit into your success and or challenges?
Well, for me, an entrepreneur is definitely an oxymoron. But the impulsivity and then easily getting bored really helps with finding new solutions or looking and taking on new challenging projects. Like one of our mantras is, we do what most engineers don't do, is make decisions. So if something new comes in, there's no code book. That's me. I want to go something new. That's interesting. It's novel, and it's a new challenge. And I love to learn. One of my top strengths is learner. So I always have to be learning something to be intellectually stimulated. So that's how proceed, because it's very hard. Have you done this before? No, but I can figure it out. I'm good at that. But once it became routine, I've already figured it out, and I got a hard time trying to get back into it. The projects get delayed. I know I've done it 100 times, but it's very hard to deliver. And then while undiagnosed, and the emotional dysregulation taken over, actually, it was quite surprising. When I really got the first engineering company self-managing and successful, which strategic coach promised to would do, unknowingly, I did not know at the time, I got bored. I'm really good at putting out fires. The startup of it was fantastic. It was high risk. It was great. The mental juices, like the brain was firing on all 12. But once we're successful, we got a good working team, I got bored. And unknowingly, I was starting to sabotage relationships or projects just so I had something to solve. There's a problem that came up. Well, I created it, and that really affected business. It affected relationships with awesome customers, affected relationships with good team. I've lost team members because of that. And that's where it's been a big key to my success, is allowing the ADHD symptoms that are somewhat managed with exercise and all that, to try new things, but at the same time, letting the symptoms take over me with the emotional dysregulation is one of the big ones, because I got bored. I was making a lot of impulsive decisions. So, blew away a lot of money on last minute decisions and had financial hardships for a few years, with the company or at home. That's where it became a challenge. And then ultimately, the self-confidence has always been chewed up by myself, or my perceived, or my impressions, what I perceived as slights from others. And that's where it became a challenge. And then the self-confidence is slowly, and I just read an article, actually, ADHDers, as you get older, your self-confidence decreases. But a neurotypical, as they get older with experience, their self-confidence increases, because we always measure against someone else, or we're not doing it like everyone else. So that really hit me too. And I can look at right now, and that's one of the examples is of this podcast. My self-confidence has gone down so much over the years. Even though I've been successful, I'm good at what I'm doing, even in engineering, it still seems to not be enough.
Yeah. You do amazing things. So that is, I always learn something new too. So again, just so grateful to be able to be on this podcast, because I'm always learning from you, which is why you're doing this. And I appreciate that. But I think, you touch on something too, which is this idea of different, and being different and functioning in a different way. And I know we've talked like pre, during, post diagnoses, but when, just reflecting back, do you feel like you really understood that you were functioning in a different way? And what did that really kind of open up for you?
Right from a young age, as far as I can remember back, I always knew I saw the world different. I solved problems or looked at things different. And there was always a resistance, unknowingly, by my parents, everyone around me, schools, family, friends. But I always knew inside of me, deep down inside of me, that this is the real me. This is how I work best. I've always known that, but I wasn't able to communicate it. And then with time, to be socially accepted, or to do a job properly, or to meet the expectations of how they're supposed to be, I would just mask myself or create a new character and act like a different character so I can meet those demands and expectations. But then hence that journey of self-actualization, self-awareness, it got to the point where there was one puzzle piece missing. No matter how many assessments I took, what I read, I had everything but one little thing. And it turned out to be that ADHD diagnosis.
And when that came, what did that unlock, or what was the, André 2.0 once that diagnosis was made?
That took a while to figure out, but that was after some group therapy and talking with a psychologist and a therapist, and actually doing some free writing. Ultimately, it validated that what I knew, how I work best, and how I wasn't a freak. I wasn't out there. This is how and it got an explanation. My brain is wired differently, and this is how I work, and it's okay. I'm, it's, you are you. And then the character you've been playing for 40 plus years has been almost like a lie. And then we just got to figure out to make sure that the real André is out there and not this character. But ultimately what the turning point was when I was writing, and it just basically was, I then forgave myself for being so hard on me all these years. Like a lot of the ADHD people, is they are their worst critic, their worst enemy. I don't think there's anything someone else can tell an ADHD or anything worse than what they tell themselves. You'll be surprised what can be done and what our brains can do to talk ourselves out of stuff. By having all that negative feedback and negative effects and influences over the years. But for me, once I forgave myself for being so hard on me all these years, that really now opened up more opportunities and just let me, that was a big burden off my shoulders. And yeah, that was a tough one, but a good one.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's this, and I think, you know, everybody has their own relation to this, but, you know, specific to this conversation, that idea of there being kind of a box, you know, and if you don't fit into the box, then there's this either constant comparison or constant striving to like be within that box or in those parameters. Knowing what you know of kind of always being outside of that box, and certainly now having, you know, a name for it or a connection to that, is there a way that you feel like we as a community can make that box feel a little less thick for people to be within? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's even with the neurotypicals, like everyone's got different strengths, they got different abilities, and just let people solve problems the way they solve it. So just because I appear flighty, good ideas, I might say the impulsive thing on, you know, I see things differently, I say things differently. I can't keep eye contact a lot of times because that's of the Asperger's aspects of my diagnosis. I got to fidget, I can't sit still. Smoke and mirrors, politics I can't handle because I see right through it all. I see games. It's that prejudge, the image judge. Just because it's been always done this way doesn't mean it's the right way. And just because you're not that way doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. And that's why I've always looked at people from a long time. Like, it's just, why do you react that way? Why are you doing it that way? And I try to see and understand the why behind it. And there, you know, you got a different strength or there's some reason or resistance. But it's not an excuse. It's not, ADHD is not an excuse. It's an explanation. So I still have to be aware of the impulsivity. And it's not, even though it's, you know, at times there's times and places for anything, which doesn't matter if you're neurodiverse or not. And you just got to be a little more cognizant of aware.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I think you have said this to me over and over, and I think it is exactly where this, you know, conversation has led us to, which is really that, you know, ADHD is part of you. It's not all of you. And I know that you have spent a lot of time in that kind of self-awareness, actualization space, all different kinds of assessments and readings. And, you know, there's puzzle pieces to you that are not just, you know, ADHD either. And so that, you know, quote that you do say often, which is ADHD is part of you, it's not all of you. Break that down a little bit for me, because I think it kind of is pulling that last piece of the conversation forward.
See, a lot of people will see ADHDers or non-ADHDers, they see it as a disorder. But like I said, an unmanaged symptoms is a disorder because it gets in the way of progress and it affects your life. But if we can manage it, it becomes a strength. But both sides of the coin, they use that to define that person or themselves. It's so they say it's all you. So I'm ADHD, so I can't do anything. You're ADHD, you just can't do anything. But that's the mentality and the mindset of it's defining all. The box gets it all. But during my search of self-understanding and awareness is that there are so many different aspects of the brain, your personality, and parts of you that, you know, there's many different aspects that are defined by personality, experience, innate abilities. So therefore, that I got different parts of me affecting different strengths and abilities. And, your experience, as you know more, that's a different part of the brain. And then your feelings is a different part of your brain. How you do things is a different part of your brain. So for that, to me, I simplified it very easily, which is also another one of my strengths, is that therefore that ADHD has to also be a piece, not all of me. And then once I start seeing as that and identifying that the ADHD is affecting this, or it's my other parts of my mind that's affecting these, or my strengths, like my learning strength is not my ADHD. My learning strength is my cognitive ability. And it's also has to do with my affective. I love to learn. So that's where I started figuring is it's only a part of you. It's not all of you. And then when you start looking at it as just a piece, then you can forgive yourself. And then you can start being open to seeing how you are strong, where your strengths are actually from. And it's not a disorder.
Yeah.
Right. And then just one last point is everyone wants one easy, simple way to define others. And then we tend to fall with that mindset to do so. And to me, that's a fallacy. You can't put everyone in a certain box. And, depending, like I know you want to do a certain way. That's one type of box, but then another day you got a different interest. It's a different box. So one size fits all does not work.
No. And I think, humans are just by nature so multifaceted, right? So there is no one way is the right way. And, I think just in what this Impulsive Thinker podcast is about is, this episode, I'm digging in a little bit to who you are, right? As the kind of leader of this. But the idea of week after week having different guest hosts and you interviewing different people in all realms and connections in with this topic, I think that is the value of this, in that there's going to be lots of different examples of structures and habits and strategies that people have used to be successful. And, we're going to get deeper into a lot of yours throughout this podcast series. And so I think that is such a beautiful part of this, is that there's going to be almost too many strategies and habits that can be used. And so which are going to best fit with each listener, depending on who they are and what their strengths are, and, symptoms that really, resonate for them.
Yeah. And then the other thing I will be sharing a lot is my personal experience and challenges. And I'm not shy about any of that. I've messed up a lot of times. And what we want to portray here is that, every bad experience I've had, I've transformed it. I figured out what went wrong so I can avoid it next time. And it's a common challenge to everyone. And if you can just say, hey, that happens to me, or someone's living what I'm living, it's really cool when someone validates what you've been feeling, or, you don't feel like that oddball of that person out. But definitely everything's going to be based on true science, true research I've done, true life experience. Nothing's going to be made up. And I want to bring on other high achieving ADHD entrepreneurs to prove that we can still be successful. It might be a little challenging to do it in a neurodiverse world, but it still can be done. And we just got to figure out ways to create structures and to create systems that we can be, our biggest problem is to see the positives in our lives. Once we succeed at something, it's out of our mind and we don't look at it as a positive again, because we're on to the next thing. But it's a lot of work, but you're not the only one out there. And, I really would like to hear from listeners. If you got current challenges, or if you got questions, or I even want to hear which systems and routines or solutions you have. You can go to the impulsivethinker.com website to go through there, or you can email at questions@theimpulsivethinker.com.
Yeah, awesome. And I think, again, that is the value of what you are creating here, which is a space for people to be able to get that sense of community. And I think feel understood and, be within a different box where everybody is kind of, feeling the same way. Just kind of final question, I guess, as we look at moving forward into this series where people are going to be able to touch in and listen to other high achieving entrepreneurs, experts in the field, people connected in all different ways. When they are listening, when they are, coming to get some of these strategy structures, habits, what is something that is really important for you in terms of ADHD awareness, that, you kind of wish you could have told your, 10-year-old self, let's say? I mean, you have such a great opportunity here, I think, to connect with so many people in so many different ways around this topic. What is, kind of a finishing thought?
To tell that kid,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're not a freak. You're perfect as you are. Understand yourself, and you stay true to you. But to be able to grow from this, I found once I really opened up my eyes and took off the blinders and being truly honest with myself and being able to truly see deep inside, that's when the transformation started to occur. But you got to be completely honest with yourself and not rely on the diagnosis or someone else to say, well, it's already decided, or that's the reason, therefore I can't. There's always a solution. If you got the drive and you want to overcome something, you can do it. But you just got to be truthful and honest at the root cause. So perfect.
Awesome.
Well, Nicole, thank you very much. This has gone, they always say your first episode is probably your worst, but I gotta say, I don't think so. This was very well, a great experience. And I'm really glad you're able to share this with me because, you've been one of my biggest supporters and one of my key players on the entrepreneurial growth I've had. And for anyone out there who wants more information on the Strategic Coach program, which is for high achieving entrepreneurs, you can go to strategiccoach.com for more information. The link is down in the show notes on this. And if you want to get more information, you can see the links there. And there's some, actually, there's a lot more free tools now right now. So Nicole, thank you very much. I appreciate your time on this and your support.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been an awesome journey to get to podcast one, and I hope to jump on at some point again in the future. And I can't wait to listen episode by episode because I know there's some awesome people to come and some awesome conversations.
I know this is definitely, you're going to hear more from Nicole because she's got a really unique ability of pulling out the good information out of people.
Awesome.
And for you, the listener, I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I hope you can subscribe down below. And if you think there's other ADHD entrepreneurs or even neurotypicals that want to learn about the ADHD entrepreneur, please share this with other people. We're going to have a weekly interview and a couple of random Andre thoughts and observations shorts that actually, it's kind of cool. The stuff that I'm going to start, the first few are going to be with the development of this podcast. And like I said, it's going to be true and honest and real. And, there's quite a few challenges to develop this. And so please listen, and I hope I'll hear you again or you hear me again later. Take care.